Vietnam in 2050 will look totally different than it is today. It's not just about money. They've tried everything. Implementation is messy, getting stuck in the middle income trap. So how would mass immigration fit into the picture? Vietnam is not alone. Other East and Southeast Asian countries are facing similar issues. Starting a new life in Vietnam is not as easy as ordering a bowl of pho. Vietnam has a big problem, and we're not talking about the traffic chaos or the delicious food that ruins your diet plans. It's far more urgent. Vietnam's birth rate is dropping like a stone in water. And if nothing changes, we're gonna have an imbalance in the population, which means that we'll have a lot more older people and very few younger people to drive the economy. Sounds dramatic? It should, because this could reshape Vietnam's future in ways that we may not expect. But how did we get here? And what happens if Vietnam's birth rate continues to sink? Stick around because we're about to find out. So let's get started. First, let's zip through Vietnam's modern history quickly like a motorbike on a sidewalk. After the Vietnamese kicked out the French in 1954, Vietnam was mostly a rural society with families that were so large you would need a spreadsheet to keep track of all the cousins. Having multiple kids was not just a hobby, it was for labor and lineage. After that, decades of war, and in the mid-1970s, after reunification, Vietnam had an estimated population of about 50 million people. However, there were estimates that it was much lower, but we'll keep it very simple. 1975, war's over, baby boom began. Families started getting really large, 5, 6, 7, 8, and even more. Cue the post-war baby boom, where families multiply faster than you can say, bánh mì. Why? Cheap living costs, non-existent sexual education, agrarian lifestyles, limited contraception, cultural norms that valued big families, and no Netflix. Also, the government heavily promoted national recovery. Having children felt like a patriotic duty. More children for labor to build roads, factories, and everything in between. By the late 1980s, Vietnam was inching towards 65 to 70 million people. Then came Đói mới, which is Vietnam's version of, okay, let's start capitalism, but still call ourselves socialists. Shifting Vietnam to a market economy, sparking rapid urbanization, and introducing family planning campaigns. Having a third child would mean that you would lose benefits or promotions. Of course, that is a little bit buzzkill if you really like children. Over time, birth rates went from 4 to 5 children to 2.1 children per family. And that is the replacement rate. Vietnam population boomed to 100 million people, but ironically, new babies are very hard to find. And now, with the short history out of the way, let's see what is happening right now. So, how bad is it really? The total fertility rate of Vietnam is 1.9 in 2024, which is below the replacement rate of 2.1, 3 years in a row. This means that Vietnam is not having enough babies to sustain its population long term. In Ho Chi Minh City, this rate can dip as low as 1.39, which would make Sweden look like a baby-making factory. In the rural areas, the numbers are slightly higher, but also trending downward. Complicating matters is the persistent skew. 112 male births to only 100 female births. This may not sound like a huge number, but over decades, this creates a shortage of women and a host of future social dilemmas. Now that we know that the numbers are dipping below replacement, but why are Vietnamese families having fewer kids? Let's dig into the reasons behind this shift. So why is the rate declining? Here are a few reasons. Ever tried renting an apartment in Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi? Let's say you'll cough up enough cash to feed a small village on a middle-class income. When housing, childcare, and daily necessities are very expensive, this adds up faster than motorbike traffic, especially if you're saving up for a new motorbike or get a car, which is a status symbol in Vietnam. As more people flock to the urban centers for higher-paying jobs, they realize that big families do not fit in small apartments or the cost of living. And it's not just about money. Life in the city moves fast. Commutes, Long work hours and weekends spent recovering from the long work week leave very little time or energy for child rearing. Vietnam's younger generation has grown up watching Hollywood movies, scrolling on Instagram, and binge watching on Netflix. They have adopted individualistic and Western lifestyles, traveling, exploring career opportunities abroad, and prioritizing personal freedom over family expansion. Another reason is women's education and career focus. Imagine studying for years, earning scholarships, and getting that coveted job at a multinational corporation. Now imagine pressing pause on their careers for diapers and daycare. Many Vietnamese women won't stall their professional growth. With more women graduates, higher education leads to later marriages and fewer births. Also, compared to 50 years ago, contraception is everywhere. Pharmacies sell birth control pills over the counter, and family planning campaigns have educated people on how to manage reproductive health. So the oops, we have 4 children scenario is less common than in your grandma's generation. Hey, quick side note, did you know that 80% of you are not subscribed to this channel? That's like going to a Vietnamese wedding and not enjoying the buffet. You're missing out all the great stuff. If you enjoy the information about the shortage on the baby crisis, make sure you hit that subscribe button and share with all your friends. If you want other more refreshing and interesting stories about Vietnam, then help us by hitting that subscribe button. All right, all that information, let's get back into it. Now for the big twist. Experts predict that Vietnam will be a super age society by 2049, which means that over 20% of the population are over 65 years old. This may sound cozy, but imagine aunties walking everywhere. But with fewer newborns, the workforce shrinks, pensions get overstressed, and the entire system wobbles like a wobbly coffee table. So just think about it. If there are fewer young people filling in the jobs, then who are paying taxes for healthcare, infrastructure, and social security? Robots? Maybe in the future. But for now, that strain falls on a smaller group of people having to support a growing group of retirees. Those 112 to 100 ratios of male to female birth may not seem like a big crisis, but you top on 1 or 2 decades and you're gonna have a chunk of men who cannot find partners. And this will lead to a slew of many other issues. So at this point, you must be wondering, so is everyone panicking? Well, the local governments certainly are, because these are pressing issues. So we have a growing population on the horizon. So what's being done about it? Some cities are offering financial incentives. Think grants for women under 35 who have 2 children, or stipends for prenatal care. Officials are drafting a new population law that removes penalties for a 3rd child. This is a stark reversal from past rules. On top of that, the governments are pushing for better prenatal care and neonatal services. Picture public awareness campaigns with cartoon babies giggling on billboards saying, "Have more babies, save the future." Implementation is messy. Vietnam is very diverse. What works in Ho Chi Minh City may flop in the rural province. Policy is one thing, but what about the economy at large and for investors eyeing Vietnam's bustling growth? Vietnam used to flaunt its young, abundant labor force in order to attract investors like Nike and Samsung. But if birth rates continue to drop, then Vietnam will lose that competitive advantage. Wages will increase, which would be better for workers, but it would reduce the labor-intensive attraction of Vietnam. For now, investors are still flocking in, drawn by the trade agreements, growing GDP, and strategic location. But for the long term, if the workforce is not there, factories will relocate to countries with more robust demographics. It's not fear-mongering, it's basic math. Some talk about automation, AI, and robotics picking up the slack. Others talk about loosening immigration policies to bring in foreign workers. Vietnam is not alone. Other East and Southeast Asian countries are facing similar issues. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and China are also grappling with low fertility rates. Some countries even lower than Vietnam. They've tried everything from giving couples money to have kids to extended parental leave. Results have been mixed, Thus, there is no quick fix. Closer to Vietnam, Thailand is already labeled aged, and the wealthier Singapore is below replacement. Vietnam's challenge is to avoid getting stuck in the middle income trap before its workforce shrinks. It's a race against time, or more accurately, it's a race against fewer babies. With those lessons in mind, let's see what Vietnam's path forward looks like. Looking at potential solutions and what might unfold next. We could see bigger financial incentives, tax breaks, free daycare, or extended parental leave. Another approach, welcoming foreign workers. This could solve the high-skilled labor shortages, but it also questions the integration and cultural shifts. Many Vietnamese are very proud of their unique heritage. So how would mass immigration fit into the picture? Younger generations are not just accepting old norms. They are shaping new narratives in sustainability, minimalism, and career-focused lifestyles. Whether this includes kids or not remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure, Vietnam in 2050 will look totally different than it is today. And that's where you come in. Want to help Vietnam beat its baby drought and have a banh mi on the side? If you are planning to relocate to Vietnam, make sure you have a strong legal strategy. Because starting a new life in Vietnam is not as easy as ordering a bowl of pho. Thinking about getting married in Vietnam? An even better idea is to get a prenuptial agreement. We've seen enough cautionary tales in our last video about marriage trends and how rapidly they can go sideways. Click on the right-hand corner to check out those videos. Luckily, our law firm can help you with marriage certificates, prenuptial agreements, and wills and beyond. Love may make the world go round, but a solid legal foundation will help it stop from spinning off its axis. We have seen why fewer babies are born, why it matters, and what is to come next. Are we heading into a crisis, or is this just another part of Vietnam's ever-evolving story? Vietnam's low birth rates is not just a headline, it's a potential game changer for the country's future. From cultural shifts to strict economic realities, many factors have led us to this point. Governments are struggling to find solutions, businesses are eyeing the labor pool, and families are weighing in the cost, literal and emotional, of having kids in this fast-paced world. Who knew the biggest drama of our time is having fewer babies? Forget the telenovelas, this is the real-life soap opera. Is your jaw still on the floor about how pricey city life is? Or the wild flip-flop from stop at 2 to please have more? Leave your comments below. If you enjoyed the ride, give that like button a nice big hug. If you haven't subscribed, then make sure you do it now. Don't be that friend that comes to a party and doesn't dance. We have a lot more stories to share about the quirks and curveballs of living in Vietnam. Whether it's a baby boom or a baby bust, the story keeps warming up. Keep your eyes on the news, ask questions, and who knows, maybe the next big headline is Vietnam, Return of the Cribs. On behalf of Duong Global, my name is Ken Duong. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.